So I breastfed all four of my children. So I've experienced most of the problems that people talk about. The baby not latching on properly was a big thing with my first two babies because they were quite small. The first one especially, because as she was small and weak because of being in SCBU and being fed through the feeding tube for 5 days, it had almost overridden that latching reflex. The midwives attempted to make it easier for me and pretty much took over because I was only 16. And the thing that I found really, really difficult was the way the midwives manhandled even my breasts, if you like. They just came in and grabbed them. There was no, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come over and I'm going to touch you and I'm going to put it in the baby's mouth in the right position. It was just straight in there, grab. And it was like, I don't like touch anyway. I have to be warned about touch. So I think it wasn't acceptable. I think we've come on a lot from those days now. But I found that really difficult. And I think it was because I was a young mum. I definitely saw that the older mums were given a lot more respect than I was as a young mum. But as I say, hopefully we're far more understanding of asking for consent before people are touched now. But as I said, it wasn't the case when I had my children. One of the other issues is I'm quite big busted. I always have been. So when I was breastfeeding, I was extremely big busted. It was a big problem with my youngest as she was so small. We had to work out positions where she could breathe easily. So I found lying down or leaning to one side was more beneficial for her than sitting up and trying to feed. So I had a lot of problems with what's called engorgement, and you usually get that for 2, maybe 3 days after birth, where your breasts are absolutely rock hard and hot and sore. But that went on quite a long time because she was only taking tiny feeds. And because of that, when I did feed and when I managed to actually feed her in my arms, I'd end up with a baby that was absolutely soaked in milk because the other breast was just leaking out like there was no tomorrow. I did buy the plastic breast cups that you can sterilise and donated milk to the milk bank. I did that while I was in hospital, and they'd actually send somebody out once a day to my home as well to collect it, which was really good. I know with engorgement, usually they say try not to use a breast pump because that actually just encourages the milk supply. But because of her being in special care unit and it being so important that she got that first good quality milk, they encouraged the use of a breast pump. And they did keep saying that once she gets stronger, this will get better. And in most women, an overproduction of milk does. But with all of my babies, that overproduction was constant for the first 3 months. So each baby, I made sure that I donated. I did find ways to overcome it, which hopefully will be useful for other people if they have the same problem. One was always wearing dark coloured tops because I didn't just leak when my baby cried, I leaked when anybody's baby cried. So I could be walking through the supermarket and I'd get streams of breast milk down the front of me, even if I wore absorbent cups. So a dark top was a really good thing to have. Had to buy an absorbent bed pad because otherwise I would wake up in a pool of breast milk. You can buy sleep bras when you're pregnant, which are really quite comfortable. So I always made sure I made one of those, wore one of those at night with absorbent cups in as well. I also used to use a breast pump just before a feed because she was quite tiny. So that sudden gush of milk, she'd often choke on it. So I used to have to express a little bit to overcome that sudden rush. and it stopped them flooding as well. And then the other thing was wrapping her in a towel rather than a blanket, so that if I did leak, the towel got it. I then didn't have to change me, change baby, change everything. So the other thing I experienced was blocked milk ducts. That happened quite a lot. And I think that's because I've got big boobs and I've got a lot of ducts. So, but most of the time I could overcome that with like resting in warm flannel on them, or soaking in a bath. That was funny because the bath usually looked like something Cleopatra would be lying in by the end of it, but it really did work, and it massively relieved the discomfort. And then I was lucky, I suppose, that I'd fed 4 children for such a long time. I fed, yeah, my eldest I fed for, I think it was 11 months, and my youngest I fed for 18 months. So I fed for quite a lot of my life, really. But I only ever got mastitis once. Um, Initially, I thought it was just a blocked duct, so I did the things I would usually do. But it didn't improve by the next day, which it usually would have done. And by that time, I was really feeling quite unwell. My temperature had gone up. I was feeling sick. I was feeling giddy. Um, and I thought, oh God, no, I've got a cold coming. That's all I need with a baby. But by late afternoon that day, my whole breast, right up to my shoulder and down my arm, was brilliant red and hot to the touch. And my temperature just kept going up. So the GP prescribed me some quite strong antibiotics. And it took a couple of days. I did check that I could still breastfeed, but actually it was too uncomfortable to feed on that side. So I fed on the side that wasn't infected and then used a pump to express from that side, because at least then I could control the flow and could take it away when I needed to. And again, using a warm cloth once I did go back to feeding. So mostly to check that it kept it flowing rather than getting any blockages. And it cleared up. Probably took about a week to clear up, but it was really painful, and it's worth checking whether there's any redness or soreness at any point and keeping a close eye on it.